Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Chapters on Armstrong Television. This is the show that profiles authors, editors, and publishers in the tri-state area of Huntington, West Virginia, the various areas around it, Kentucky, and Ohio. And while some people don't think of Ohio as being Appalachian, it is. I'm your host, Carter Seaton, and it's a delight to have you with us today. And particularly today, we're honored to have the Poet Laureate of Ohio, Kari Gunter-Seymour, with us. Thanks for coming, Kari.
Oh my goodness, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Carter.
Kari is a ninth generation Appalachian and the editor of the Women of Appalachia project anthologies, Women Speak, volumes 1 through 6, and Essentially Athens, Ohio, an anthology focused on landmarks, tales, and experiences of those living in or deeply connected to Athens County. She holds a BFA in graphic design and an MFA in commercial photography, and is a retired instructor in the E.W. Scripps School of Journalism at Ohio University. A poem she wrote in support of families living in poverty in Athens County, Ohio, went viral and has been seen by over 100,000 people, and I'm sure the number's grown by now, resulting in thousands of dollars donated to the local food pantry. Before she became the Poet Laureate of Ohio, she was the Poet Laureate of Athens, Ohio. So again, welcome. Your life is quite a bunch of accomplishments.
Carter, you should talk.
Well, we also have to talk about where all your poetry has been seen in several publications, including Verse Daily, Rattle, Crab Orchard Review, Main Street Rag, Stirring, Still, KLOX, and the LA Times. And your chapbook called Serving is available from Crisis Chronicle Press. She's a Best of the Net and Pushcart Prize nominee, and her current collection, A Place So Deep Inside America It Can't Be Seen, is available from Sheila Nagieg Editions. So that's quite a bunch of accomplishments for you as well. Kari, tell me, first of all, I want to know, it's just my own curiosity, where did the name Sheila Nagieg Editions come from for the title of that publication house?
Well, if you Google that, you'll find that it's a goddess, so to speak. And I wish I should know more about it than I do. And here's you'll appreciate this, Carter. As of the end of this week, I think that's right. Yes, the end of this week, I'm going to have 2 whole weeks off, and I have a huge stack of books. And I have on my list all these things I need to research, and to thoroughly research the goddess Sheila Nagieg is on that list. But I hope people will look into it because it's just a really fascinating story. Now, as far as why Haley Mitchell Hagen chose that, there is an about/history page on her blog site that explains all of that, and it's a very interesting journey that Haley has taken. And she's just across the river from me, across the river from Ironton, Ohio, Ironton, and she's in Russell, Kentucky. And so she's right here. And I loved your comment about Ohio, because not all of Ohio is Appalachian.
Right.
But southeastern Ohio is, and we're very proud of that. And our people are very Appalachian.
Yes, absolutely. Well, speaking of that, you are 9th generation Appalachian. Where did your family, everybody who's here in Appalachia came from somewhere else. Where did your family come from?
Well, the 9th generation came from Berkshire, England. That's John and Joanna Gunter III. And they ended up in Henrico, Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm assuming it's because of the coal and iron jobs, at that time. Mm-hmm. But at some point, my family, this is my daddy's side. This is my daddy's side. And they branched into farming, because by my 4th generation out, Patience and Bailey Gunter, this is a fascinating story. The family had made their way to South Carolina by then. They actually started in Virginia, went to North Carolina, South Carolina, and ended up in Tennessee. But this 4th generation were living in Wagner, South Carolina, and they heard about this opportunity to actually start a city, and it was Aiken.
Oh,
which is, yeah, as you know, one of the two largest cities in the basin there.
mhm.
And that was, of course, quite some time ago. But in doing my research, I stumbled on a newsletter that someone had put together for the 150th anniversary of the founding of Aiken. And there was a little paragraph about my great great great
Wow.
grandmother. And I've got this here. Hope you don't mind that I read it. And this is what they said about her. And these are the people of the time.
Uh-huh.
So they had clipped this little thing out of a newspaper during that time, and they featured it in this newsletter 150 years later.
Wow.
I know. And this is what it says. She was a strong woman, stubborn, who drove one of the Conestoga wagons. Her shoes were big and loose and rough, and she wore on her head that milliner's creation you call a poke bonnet.
Hmm.
In spite of her gray hair, she looked brave enough to tackle a den of wildcats. So
That is a
now you
strong woman
know
for
where I
you.
get my spunk from. I
Exactly.
have a long, long list, and I have other wonderful stories about the women in my past. I know that's not what we're talking about today,
Right.
but I do,
Right.
and I often share them when I'm, doing readings.
But I think that history of your family and your background informs this new book of
Yep,
poetry.
absolutely.
Tell us how you draw from those kinds of stories, for instance, and how they inform your writing of poetry.
Well, I think one of the very basis of that is just having discovered I had these amazingly strong women in my ancestry, and not just on my daddy's side, my mom's side as well. And my mom is daddy, and my grandfather's side and my grandmother's side on my mama's. Those people were also immigrants. My grandfather's people were Dutch, and they came in the 8th century or 8 generations ago. And then my grandmother's people were from Ireland,
Mhm.
and I know them back 4 generations because they're just down in Racine, Ohio, which is not far from me. And the saddest thing is we don't know each other. And I'm going to rectify that this summer because that's just crazy, to be that close. Because I'm literally maybe, I don't know, 45 minutes from them or something.
Hmm.
Um, so anyway, I urge everyone to look back at their people if they can. It's not an easy thing, and I so far haven't had to pay to do that. Um, so first of all, just knowing there were strong women, and then thinking about some of the stories that had been handed down to me just over the last few generations, and and then and then just relating to the fact of things that had happened to my grandmothers and my mother and myself.
Mhm.
And it was a full basis for the poems, and I just let myself write them. And for the longest time I didn't want to share them because they do feel very personal. um, but then things started happening, like J.D. Vance's book came out that kind of gave a very poor representation of Appalachia. And I have some good and bad feelings about that book as well. Although I admire him for doing so well, I think that's wonderful that he has. Um, and I decided I probably do need to maybe just start sharing these. So I started putting them out and seeing if they could get published anywhere, and several of them did. And then the pandemic hit, and it was like I think it was like just a handful of days before the Appalachian Studies Association conference was to begin, and I was going to be gone for that 4 or 5 days, and I was all packed up and ready to go, and all of a sudden it got canceled. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I have these days. I have 5 days that I have no commitments because I cleared my calendar. I'm going to put this book together. And I did. I
Yeah.
did.
Wow.
And
That's
I
pretty
submitted
quick.
it. Pardon me?
I said, that's very quick.
It really was. I don't know. I feel like I was guided. This sounds so goofy to say you were guided by your ancestors, but I do. I think I had it maybe clear in my mind what I needed to do. And I'd consulted with some people about a few of the poems, and and had a little chapbook put together actually, but then decided, I've got a lot of poems here. I think this could be a book. And so I did that. I put it into book form and just started shopping it out to different places. And Haley Mitchell Hagen at Sheila Na Gig has been working with me for a few years now with the Women of Appalachia project. And she was so good. I had barely sent it to her, and she said, I would just love to publish this. And so she did. And the same thing happened to her. The pandemic hit, classes at OU stopped. She had some extra time on her hands, so she was able to do that. It makes me feel like it's meant to be, that this is, however far this little book goes, that it needed to be out in the world. Whoever reads it maybe needed to, because the stars certainly aligned. And that wasn't just all me, believe me.
Right. Did you, you said you had written most of the poems. Did you have to write any in that 4 to 5 days to get it into a full book, or had you already collected them and then realized which ones fit into like this certain theme?
I had written most of them, and then I had to revise several because I had some that were sort of done, could have, might have been okay, but they just weren't okay enough for me. You know how you get that folder that you're like, I'm going to get back to these? And some of them you get back to right away, and others you wait for some reason. I don't know. You know how that is, writing chapters, I'm sure, and things that you do in your many words. And I say you write many words because I write few words, is how I say it with the poets. So I did. I spent a really intense couple of weeks working on the newer poems. I put them in the manuscript and explained that I would be updating some of them.
Let's see.
And that's exactly how it happened. And so I was just so fortunate to have a publisher so willing to work with me and to be so hands off. I mean, she said, I don't want to edit your poems. I'll tell you if I find typos or if I think you need a comma somewhere or something like that. It's just, I just want your voice. I want your voice as it is. And that's a very special thing, I think, to find somebody willing to do that.
Have you ever had the experience of deciding that you wanted to put out a chapbook under a certain theme and then having to task yourself with writing to that theme, or do you always have an inspiration for a specific poem and then they seem to sort of fall into line for a theme?
Yes, I think the latter. I always say
most poets.
I'm sorry.
Do you think that's the case with most poets?
I don't know how to answer that. I'll tell you why, because I feel like my poems come to me. I have to wait for them. And then something comes into my mind, and I just have to write about it. And I do hear my, when I'm writing what I call my Appalachian poems, because I do get rowdy and write some protest poems and, some other things. But when I'm writing my Appalachian poetry, I hear the voice of the person that I'm writing about. I literally do. I hear that voice, whether it be my grandmother's, some aunt, or for instance, when I write the poems about my, late ancestors, I feel like I hear their voices as well. So I feel like each one is a gift to me, and I do work hard for them. Don't get me wrong, but I do feel like they are given to me, and that feeling is like none other. That's the compassion. That's why we write. We can't help not. And you better be ready. You have to be passionate about it, because you certainly, well, I should speak for myself. Don't make a bunch of money. And sometimes people are cruel to you. They don't like your work and they're cruel. And you have to be ready for that too and accept that, But then sometimes people are really kind, and then you're glad you did. And it's always for me, it was such a special thing to tell some stories about my culture and my people.
Whose voice is daughter-in-law mine once removed?
Oh, that's me.
Is it?
Yeah.
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 Beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the other one that was really gut-wrenching, I think, was conflagration. I have tried pronouncing that. I think that speaks to anybody who's had even a slightly contentious relationship with a mother. Is that you as well, or is that someone
It
else?
is,
Yeah.
it is. You know, I'm sprinkled all through this book, and nobody's really asked me that before. You know, which ones are absolutely you, you know.
Right.
But yeah, I wrote Conflagration, um, you know, before, right before my mama died. And actually all the poems I wrote before she passed. My mama was, she passed May 1st of this past year, and she was one of those who got trapped in the nursing home, and I did not see her for 6 weeks.
Oh, my.
And I got to spend, one day of her being conscious, you know, before she went down. And it took, you know, of course, several days for her to actually pass, but she was, you know, not, I could not reach her after that first day I got to spend with her. And she had dementia. And in her day, she was a fire pistol, I'll tell you. And and the cutest thing was is because she had dementia and she knew I traveled a lot with my poetry, and she loved that. She just was so proud of that. And when I went in that morning, and forgive me if I get a little emotional.
Well, I understand.
And she woke up and we couldn't believe it. The nurses couldn't believe it. Nobody believed she would wake up like that. And she did. She woke up and I walked in the room and she said, "Where you been?"
Oh,
And I said, "You know, I've been out reading my poem." She goes, "Well, I knew that. I knew that's what it was, but I missed you." And that time passed, and I'm almost grateful for dementia because of that. She didn't realize it had been 6 weeks, and that was such a blessing.
right, exactly.
Sorry.
Wow, no, I understand. Um, excuse me. Tell me a little bit about the poem that you wrote. You said you sometimes get feisty. The one that you wrote that supported the food pantry. What
Oh
caused,
yeah.
was that during the pandemic?
No, I wrote that poem last December. I think it was like the 28th or 29th. Joe Burrow had just won the Heisman Trophy, and I don't know if you know that story, but he is a local boy here in Athens County. Well, he's a man. He's a man now.
Mhm.
um, Grew up in Athens County, went to Athens High School, and he won the Heisman Trophy, which is, of course, an amazing thing.
Sure.
Excuse me, I have to keep wiping my eyes here. I hate that. Um, and so when he gave his speech up on the stage in front of literally tens of thousands of people, because it was televised, of course,
Yeah.
he spoke about how very special this award was, and he kind of dedicated it to the kids in Athens County, who he said, because he knew that many of them lived well beyond below the poverty line, and he had some statistics. And um and he sort of dedicated his time up there to young people he'd gone to school with, and others who were still, you know, fighting that battle of poverty in Athens County. And people went crazy. His friend Will Draybold set up a Facebook fundraiser to try and collect $1,000 for our local food pantry. Well, by the end of January, well, that had started in November, and by the end of December, uh, things had stopped. But they were about $20,000 short of $500,000.
Wow.
Yes. And so I was the Athens County Poet Laureate then, and I thought, oh my God, I've got to write a poem in honor of Joe Burrows, or I wouldn't be the Athens County poet now, would I? You know. So I wrote that little poem, and actually I wrote it kind of about my sons in my own life being so poor when he was growing up. And I sent it to my local newspaper, and they published it. And then I put it on Facebook, you know,
Mhm.
and lo and behold, people started sharing it. They shared it on the fundraising page. And within 24 hours, nearly 100,000 people had seen it, and the 500,000 was earned.
Wow,
And
that's just
so,
amazing.
yeah, it's an amazing thing. And that 500,000 has been, you know, turned into an endowment at the Foundation for Appalachian Ohio. And so they're working to do away with food insecurity in southeastern Ohio.
That's
I mean,
fantastic.
it's just amazing. Yeah, the power of the word.
Yeah. Speaking of being poet laureate, I know that's a term that we in the writing world understand, but for people who are out there, what does that actually mean for somebody that doesn't know what a poet laureate does? What did you do as the Athens County Poet Laureate, and now what's your role as the Ohio Poet Laureate?
Well, as Athens County Poet Laureate, I felt like it was my duty to seek out all who were writing, not just poets, just anybody who was writing, and connect us all. Because networking is so important. It's important to keep up your morale. It's important to bounce your work off other people. And they help you have the courage to submit your work if indeed you want to submit. And they sit in the audience while you read live, and you need that support too. So it's all about support. So uh, I started scheduling potluck dinners because we're Appalachian. We got to have
Right.
food,
What
or it's not
else?
a get together. So I scheduled these potluck dinners, and lo and behold, people just came that I thought I knew everybody that was writing in Athens County, and that was absolutely not true. And I met so many wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people, and just, I mean, outrageously good writers. And we all just had the best time. I started a project called Spoken and Heard.
Mhm.
Carter, you know about this because you're going to be participating on December the 17th, 2020. I'll put that date only because this may not air until you have participated in that, but it will be archived on the City of Athens YouTube page if people want to see you read for my Spoken and Heard series. And that's been going on now for almost 3 years and
Great.
just keeps growing and growing. And I bring in featured poets and writers from just all over the country, um, to share their work so that that we can all hear these new and wonderful voices. We started out, of course, being live, and now we're virtual.
Yeah.
And I suppose that'll become some kind of hybrid thing, when things get back to
Mhm.
normal, whatever that is.
Whatever normal is. Yeah.
Right. And so everyone started saying, you're gonna apply for Ohio Poet Laureate, right? Right, right. And I kept saying, I don't think so. They said, you made us get up on that stage and read in front of 100 people, and I didn't want to do that, but you made me. Now you're gonna you're gonna apply to be Ohio Poet Laureate. And so I started thinking about it, and something I've always wanted to do is work with incarcerated teens
Mhm.
and adults, and especially women in recovery. And so that's what I offered, that if I was to be the poet laureate, that was the work I wanted to do. And so I've been very blessed because I was selected on June 9th to be Ohio's third poet laureate. And I started taking on events in July. And since then, as of next week, I will have completed 56 events
Wow.
from mid July to mid December. And mixed in all of that is time I have spent with teens incarcerated, adults incarcerated, and with women in recovery. And it has been, as I knew it would be, the most uplifting, powerful work. I think I've taught a lot of workshops that, oh my, I've cried, I've laughed. Um, that marvelous, marvelous, marvelous people who um, who their stories need to get out there. They really do. They have
Mhm.
wonderful stories, and they're not what you think they might be.
Yeah.
And they take responsibility for who they are and what they've done. And I love Ohio because we're working real hard on recidivism. We're really trying to train people and give them the tools they need to be a success once they, do their time and get out. And for those in recovery, to help them remain sober. And writing is such a powerful tool for that. And we know that. So that's a big part of my Ohio Poet Laureateship. And of course, I do the readings and I do the workshops as well. And, I try to lift up other poets any chance I get all around our state. I mention, anytime anybody asks me, I got a big long list of people that I mention that I'm fond of and that are friends of mine, and also those that I know their work.
Right.
And so I'm kind of I don't know, saying I'm an ambassador sounds way too important, but I do represent
I
Ohio.
think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
So I try not to be political. I just try to engage people in the idea of poetry and the healing powers that writing overall and poetry can have.
Now, does that give you enough time with all those duties to do your own writing?
Well, it's a stretch, I'll tell you. It's really, really been a stretch, but I belong to a small group of poet/writers, and we get together weekly. And we really try to impose on each other to try to have something to share, whether it's a new poem or something we've revised. And I swear, if it weren't for them, I would not be getting as much writing done as I am because I have been so busy. And I want to say right now, I have an amazing husband who understands that I've been on Zoom 4 times already when he's come home, and I'm also going to be on that night. And he just says, "How kind of you to make me supper tonight, honey. I really appreciate it because I know you've had a day of it, you know?"
That's
So
nice. Yeah,
I'm just really lucky in that respect.
that's great. That's great. When you have the opportunity to write, what is your writing routine? Are you a morning writer or a night writer?
You know, I know that's a very common question, but I will say again, they come to me. I can sit down. What I usually do is I revise. If I have time to just do something, I go in and I start revising older poems. But when something hits me that wants to be written, I have to sit down. I just have to. I have to make time.
Mhm.
And I sit down and I usually write the poem, and then I have to go back in and do revisions and all that. But sometimes poems come to me almost done. So
Wow.
that's my routine. I can't force it. I've tried to sit down every morning and start doing this and that, and no way.
I understand. Do you have particular poets that are kind of your heroes or your sheroes, as it might be?
Oh yeah. Well, James Wright just, got me started. I mean, to this day, in fact, I just reordered his book because one of his collections, because I had lent the book out and hasn't come back, and I thought, oh, that's all right because whoever had it loves it and wants to keep it. So his work is just so, I can just hear him saying, "Oh, Jenny," oh, it just breaks my heart every time when I think about the muse. Rebecca Gale Howe, I'm just she makes me weep. Uh, Reading her work, hearing her read her work makes me weep. I'm so fond of Marianne Worthington and her work. There's Pauletta Hansel from Ohio, who's an amazing poet. I'm trying to think of others that you want to tell everybody you can think of. Of course, Linda Parsons. We know Linda. She's not an Ohio poet, but she's a Knoxville poet who's quite wonderful. I'm trying to think here. Oh gosh, Rita Quillen, Thomas Allen Holmes. These are all Southern poets. They're Appalachian poets, so of course that's the direction I go. I love Ross Gay. He's from Youngstown, Ohio. He is not an Appalachian poet. Hanif Adar Queb, amazing, amazing urban poet out of Columbus, Ohio. Joy Priest, who is I considered an Appalachian poet. Oh my gosh, there's so many. Doug Van Gundy.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, we could sit here all day, couldn't we,
Right.
Carter, and just
Right.
name the amazing, amazing poets that are just in the tri-state area. Savannah Sipple,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
one of our champion LGBT poets. Yeah, so I'm so grateful that these are people I call friend, except for Ross Gay. I wish I was calling him a friend, but he's so busy. And
Right. So tell us
Ron Houchin.
how can we get your book?
Oh, well, I'm gonna hold it up. I do have copies myself, but the quickest, easiest way is to go to Sheila Nagig on the blog site, and she has an entire list of all of the books that she has available right now. I believe there are 7 of them or 8 of them from this year, and mine is on there. But SheilaNagig.com.
Okay.
And it's Sheila, the woman's name, dash na, N-A, dash gig, G-I-G.
Good.
And just go to her blog spot and you can even put Sheila Nagig and then Kari Gunter-Seymour, and it it will come up. You can get them on Amazon, of course,
Yeah.
but I really, really prefer that that folks support my small press, and Haley Mitchell Hagen, who's uh, doing this on her own with the help of 2 other women who are her part-time employees. So,
Thank you
and
so much.
she runs. Let me just say one more thing. I'm sorry, Carter, but Sheila Nagig is also a 4 times a year online journal, and I really would like to suggest to all of you to submit work. It's a wonderful journal, so I hope you'll do that.
Okay. Thank you so much for being with us today, Kari. I appreciate it very much. Your book is truly wonderful, and I know everybody will enjoy reading your poems, those that are you and your ancestors. So that'll do it for today on this edition of Chapters on Armstrong Television. Please stay tuned for further episodes, and in the meantime, stay masked, stay well, stay safe, and be sure to keep in touch with Armstrong Television for the news and views that impact you. Thank you so much.
Connect with Chapters through email. Write to lp4@zoominternet.net. Chapters has a Facebook page at Armstrong Chapters. Like, subscribe, share, and comment. All Chapters episodes are available on YouTube. Visit the Armstrong Neighborhood channel on YouTube and look for a playlist of all the Chapters programs.